How's everybody doing? Yeah? Feeling a little sleepy after lunch, or energy still there? That last talk was pretty cool. I liked that. I particularly resonated with what Maria was saying about how live rich isn't just about like financial, but also feeling like you belong as part of a community. Speaking of that, how many of you have I worked with in some capacity? Actually, hold on, wait, before you raise your hands. That's me. You've probably seen my face, that avatar, maybe in the Expensify open source channel, maybe in the app repo. Not him. He's the one that often gets tagged when people mean to tag me, but no. He's a good guy too. Unfortunately, he's not here, even though his GitHub handle indicates he should be. So one of our top contributors. I was looking forward to meeting another Puneet, but unfortunately won't be able to. Okay, so seriously, how many of you guys have worked with me in some capacity? A good chunk of the room. That's pretty cool. It's nice to be able to put faces to names like this. It's pretty fun. So a little bit of background on me. I have worked at Expensify for 11 years. I started 11 years ago doing sales and customer support at Expensify, and I'm a director now, I'm a developer, etc. I say etc. because I've kind of done everything that you can do here almost. I've done sales, I've done support, I've done account management. I've worked on the product, I've worked on marketing, I worked on our nonprofit, Expensify.org. I interviewed Trevor Noah. Like, there's all kinds of things that have happened during the past 11 years, but somewhere along the way I taught myself to code, and these days I mostly work with the engineering team. And today I'm going to talk to you about bugs. So I want to talk about how we approach bugs, why we approach it that way, what's unique about it, what makes it special. But there's a couple pieces of context that I think are important to have that help make it make sense. So before I get to talking about bugs, there's two things I want to talk about first. So the first is our decision to build the new Expensify chat app on React Native. And so that might sound obvious to you all. You're like, yeah, React Native, it's great, of course. But it wasn't obvious to us. And it took a lot of internal deliberation to decide to build Expensify chat on React Native. And part of the reason for that is because we actually had our own version of React Native that we built, I think in like 2009 or 2010, something like that. And it was called YAPL, which stands for Yet Another Platform Layer. And it ran on iOS, Android, Windows Phone, BlackBerry, and Palm Pre. Most of which perhaps a lot of you have never heard of. And for most of Expensify's history, that's how mobile code was written. It was written in YAPL. And so when we were deciding what to do for Expensify chat, we had to decide, are we going to do YAPL or are we going to use something else? And ultimately, we decided to use React Native for 3 reasons. And so the first is that it's just kind of better. And there's a few reasons why React Native is better than YAPL was. The part of that is because I don't think we had the conviction, really, with YAPL. What would happen is, we would need to do something or something would be broken, and we would try to figure out how to do it using YAPL. And instead of like doing the hard work of making the platform work, we would just build in some native hacks around it. Be like, yeah, cross-platform sucks, it's not possible, and we'd hack around it. And so we didn't really give it the love that it needed in order to become something like what React Native is today. The other reason that I think React Native is better is because it's open source. It's kind of obvious. Facebook uses it, yeah, but so do thousands of other applications. There's developers all over the world like you all who work on React Native, and so it improves at a much faster rate than a closed source framework like YAPL could. And the third reason is because it's just more cross-platform. They say learn once, write anywhere. I don't think once is exactly accurate. But it can run on Android, it can run on iOS, yeah, but it can also run on web. And that makes all the difference for us because it means that we can actually just have one front-end code base. And we don't have mobile devs, we don't have web devs, we just have developers because customers don't care. And it makes things more efficient, But it also makes for a better product, because when you have one code base, that also means your product design process has to be built around cross-platform. So everything that we design, we have to design it cross-platform because that's how it's going to be built. And so not only is this nice because we don't have this duplication of effort engineering-wise, but it also makes our product design process much better. Okay, so that's why we chose to use React Native. The other big decision that I think kind of relates to all of this is the decision to open source the app itself, so Expensify Chat. And you might be thinking, okay, sure, fine. I use open source stuff all the time. But while it's true that Facebook open sources React Native, they don't open source the Facebook client. And neither does Twitter, neither does Discord or Slack or any other app that you use. They would probably think that it's insane to do that. And I don't know, maybe they're right, but there's a fine line between genius and insanity. So, but the reality is that everyone can get your client-side code anyways. It's there in the browser. You can minify it and you can try to obscure it in these different ways, but it's there. So we kind of thought, why hide it? Let's just open source the client, and what the benefit we get is all of you. And so I think that was kind of the other big decision that we made ahead of, that kind of provides context into why we do things the way that we do. Okay, so I'll talk about bugs now. It's kind of I think it's required that you have one of these in your presentation if you're going to talk about software. So I think there's a lot of things about what we do in our approach to bugs that are unique. And because all of us are like so in the weeds every day, we don't always like zoom out and look at the process holistically and see where it is. So I want to spend a little bit of time today talking about why we approach bugs this way, how it works, why I think it's good, what could be better, all of those things, and hopefully get some ideas from you on how it could improve even more. And so why is it even possible to fix every bug? Is that a realistic goal? So there's this Arthur C. Clarke quote that I really like, which is that all new ideas go through 3 phases. First, everyone says, it can't be done. Then everyone says, okay, fine, it can be done, but is it worth doing? Like, should we do this? And then eventually everyone says, I knew it was a good idea all along, I told you. And this is no different. When we first set out with the idea of we're gonna fix every single bug, almost every employee at Expensify was like, that's the worst idea I've ever heard. It would never work. You're an idiot. Why would you think that? And so, okay, why did they think that? Why were they saying that to us, that it's such a terrible idea to try to fix every bug? Well, this is where we were coming from. It's a little blurrier than I wanted, but I took this screenshot on Friday. This is from our issue repo for our old Expensify app. Can you guys see this right here? Do you see this number? That's 4,300 open issues. We have never come anywhere near fixing every bug in our old project. In fact, the only thing that we've ever done is the opposite. We create bugs faster than we can fix them. Can anyone see the date on that oldest bug there? 2017. That's a 6-year-old bug. TikTok is barely older than that bug. So it's no wonder that people were like, yeah, there's no way that we can fix every bug. This is just not possible. Why would they think that? Because where we were coming from was a world in which that just wasn't something that we did. But when we open sourced Expensify, we started posting jobs on Upwork, a weird thing started to happen. We would post a job. This first one was around 2 years ago. I think it was posted by Lauren. And very quickly, we'd get a couple responses like, hey, I think I can fix that. Here's how I would do it. And so we started hiring people, and they started fixing them. And everyone was like, yeah, but the quality's going to suck. Nope. Quality was just as good, if not better, than what we could do. So we were like, okay, it can probably be done. We can have people fixing every bug. But what would happen was, as people, contributors like yourselves, were working on fixing these bugs, the app was kind of shit. And so you would find 5 more bugs as you were fixing the one that you were fixing. And so contributors like, hey, can I tell you about all these bugs that I'm finding, like, and get paid for doing it? So we were like, yeah, sure, that sounds like a good idea. Why don't you report bugs to us as you're fixing things? And so that's what we started doing. But you guys are really good at finding bugs, like really, really good at it. Like every day I go on the bugs channel and it's just like pouring bug reports. And so this created another existential crisis inside Expensify, where people are like, what are we doing? Why are we doing this? Are we sure it's a good idea to fix all these bugs? Like they find literally everything. Like they go into every corner of the app, they'll find things that are 1 pixel off and report it. So people are like, is this worth it? Are we sure that it's worth doing? And I personally think that it is worth doing. And the reason why, are any of you familiar with the butterfly effect? Not the Ashton Kutcher movie, the concept. Is anyone brave enough to stand up and say what the butterfly effect is? It's okay if not.
A butterfly flies somewhere, there's a volcano or a tsunami or a tornado.
Exactly. So the general idea, it comes from chaos theory, is that a very small change to initial conditions can create huge effects in ultimate outcomes. And I think the term started because people were trying to do storm prediction and predict where a tornado was going to touch down. So you might know that a tornado is coming, but you have no idea where exactly it's going to touch down. It's very hard to predict. And someone was talking about how something as small as a butterfly beating its wings affects where a tornado ultimately touches down. And I think the idea of we're going to fix every bug is a similar thing. It's a similar change to initial conditions. So saying, okay, we're going to prioritize bugs, we're going to choose which ones to fix, and taking that approach versus we're going to fix every bug, they don't sound that different, but the end result is just something that is incomparable. Because if you're going to fix every bug, you have to have a totally different product process, you have to have a totally different standard of engineering, you have to have a totally different company, ultimately. Everything has to be different in order for that statement to be true. And so it's not a small change. It affects everything that we do, and it affects everyone in this room. But the result is that you get a much stronger company, a much stronger engineering culture, you get a much stronger product, and you have the opportunity to create something that a billion people can actually use. You end up with something like WhatsApp, which everyone uses every day and just thinks it works. They don't even think about it, versus something like Twitter, which doesn't always work. And so we're trying to be more like the former, and I think this approach is how we get there. Okay, so now I'll actually talk about the process that we use. And there's a lot of pieces to it, and I think every piece, like when you look at the process as a whole, you're like, yeah, that's a process. It's just like any other, and it works, and that's fine. But I think each of these pieces is actually pretty unique, and it's part of our special sauce, and it's part of what makes this process actually work and makes it special. So I just want to briefly touch on each piece, kind of break it down a little bit. I know you know some of these things because you're a part of it, but just to give a more holistic picture. So the first part is Slack-based bug reporting. This might sound normal, like, yeah, we take bug reports. But almost every week someone asks, like, why do we do it in Slack? Could we just have a form or have people create GitHub issues in this template? And the reason we do it in Slack instead of any of those things is to keep the barrier super low. We want a really, really low barrier to reporting bugs. Because the more boilerplate you add on top to having to report bugs, just the less bug reports you get. And so we don't want people to have to think. You experience a bug, post in Slack. Whether it's while you're chatting here at the conference, whether it's while you're working on a PR, just post in Slack whenever you experience a bug. You don't have to think about, has anyone posted this bug before? Is someone already working on this? Is this like this other bug that I saw that someone else mentioned? You don't have to think about any of that. Just post it. And the reason just post it works is because we have this incredible QA team at Applause who kind of deals with that fire hose that comes in. So you just get this deluge of bug reports. If you look in the Expensify Bugs channel, it looks like chaos. But these people, they make sense of the chaos. They read every one of those reports. They think about, okay, has this already been reported? They go and try to reproduce it on different devices. They make sense of it, they clean it up, and they create an issue in the Expensify repo. And so these two things in tandem is what allows us to literally get every single bug reported as soon as it happens. And so what you see happening is, like, on Thursday or Friday, we launched reactions, and like within hours, we're just getting bug reports. And yeah, a lot of them are the same thing, but that process just works. And so I would imagine that going forward, part of our feature process is going to be that when we launch a feature to the community first, you guys find all the bugs with it, post them, we fix them, and then we release it to customers. Maybe, I don't know. So then once the QA team kind of makes sense of the Slack post, by the way, they also find a shit ton of bugs themselves. They then create GitHub issues, and that's the first time one of our internal team touches it. We have a team that we call the Bug Zero team, and their job is to kind of, they triage the issue, they figure out, is this something that's actually a bug, or is this intended behavior? Is it something that an external contributor can fix, or does it need to be handled by an internal engineer? They're the project manager for that bug from beginning to end. They make sure that it's moving, they make sure that people get paid fairly, all of these things. They're like the quarterback for that bug. Is that too US of an analogy? So you know what a quarterback. Do like extermination crews have a leader? They're like that, the captain of the exterminators. So they kind of they treat this bug as like it's the most important project of their life, and they move it forward. In theory, that's what they're supposed to do. If they're not doing it, you should yell at them. After that, we automatically post a job on Upwork. So Jack, he built an integration with Upwork. There's not a whole lot to say about this, except that it just keeps things moving quickly. I mean, no one uses Upwork like we do. I think Jack had to like convince them to build a new API because they couldn't handle what we were wanting to do. And so we're using Upwork at a scale that like I don't really think anyone else is. But it's just a part of, probably a lot of you found us through Upwork. That's a key part of bringing people into the community. And it'll be interesting, I think, if we move payment off Upwork, how we keep attracting new members to the community. Maybe we still use Upwork for job posting, I'm not sure, but that's something to think about. Then we have our GitHub proposal process, and that's where people propose, okay, how am I gonna fix this bug? And I think what's really key to the proposal process is our approach where we don't fix anything until we understand what the root cause of that bug is. So even if your solution works, we're not gonna use it unless we know what the root cause is. And the reason for that is we just don't believe in Band-Aid fixes. We've done them too many times, and it always just ends up biting you in the ass down the line. So we want to fix things at their root. And so oftentimes, more often than not, that means fixing something in our own code. But sometimes it means fixing something in a library we use, maybe Reanimated or Gesture Handler or React Native Core. But to us, it makes no difference. If it's an issue in our code base, we're willing to pay someone to fix it. If it's an issue in one of these libraries that we use, we're willing to pay someone to fix it. If it's an issue in React Native Core, we're willing to pay someone to fix it. It's all the same. And the reason we take that approach is honestly selfish. I mean, the customer doesn't care. You can't tell a customer, well, it's React Native's fault. So we have to fix the issue anyways. But the nice thing about that is that just by building our product, we get to benefit the community as a whole. And the nice thing for contributors is that even if you're only working on Expensify issues, you're contributing to improving the React Native ecosystem, which I think is a pretty cool aspect of working here. All right, so then we have our Contributor Plus. So Jason and Tom talked about these people a little bit, but it's a pretty cool thing that I think has kind of naturally and organically happened, where we had these contributors who were just working on so many issues. They became experts in the code base. They started understanding it as well as our internal engineers, if not better, because they were working with it so often. And so it's just kind of an obvious step of let's leverage these folks more to be a part of this process. So they collaborate with people on making their proposals. They help them tweak and improve their proposals to make them better. They work with people on their PRs, both reviewing, but also collaborating with people during the PR review. They test it on every platform, make sure we're not introducing new bugs every time we fix an existing one. Fortunately, that does happen, but they do a really good job in finding a lot of things. And I think this kind of 2 levels or multi-person PR review has helped us build a lot of strength into the process. And while it does slow us down sometimes in building functionality, I think the end result is actually faster because we just don't have to clean up so much after everything that we build. And then the last part is the 4-week internal deadline. So if we can't work with the community to figure it out within 4 weeks, then the buck has to stop with someone. And so we randomly pick an internal engineer and we say, it's your job to figure it out now. And so that doesn't mean they don't work with contributors. A lot of times they'll still work with contributors, whether at an agency or individuals, to kind of figure out the best solution. But now it's their job and ideally their primary focus, because it's been long enough that we need to get that done now. And so the sum of all this is what we call WhatsApp quality, which is being able to fix every single bug within 4 weeks. Now, is 4 weeks good enough? I mean, it's good. It's infinitely better than that old issue repo. But could it be 4 days? Could it be 4 hours, 4 seconds? Like what's actually the limit of possibility here? I would be interested in finding out what the next stage of this is. And so I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have about this. I would love to hear ideas that you might have about how we can make this process better. That's my spiel about bugs. Thanks for listening. Any questions? Yeah.
So you mentioned you use Slack to lower the barrier for reporting bugs. Have you ever played around with the concept of enough reporting? Something like Shake to report the bug?
No, we've never done that before. As far as I know, that's a cool idea though. I like the idea. So we do in the about page, I think there's an option to report a bug and it goes to concierge, but honestly, I don't think anyone has ever used it. Do you imagine that's something for users or just for in the dev app?
Well, Google applications do it for users.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh.
And they're very often internal releases.
Okay. We should do that. Yeah, I like that idea.
Imagine sending bug reports to chat with them. It's
very
super easy.
Right.
You have all the contents.
Yeah, that's a great idea. I like that a lot. Especially once we move the bug reporting channel out of Slack and into Expensify. It's literally shake it and it'll just take you to that channel to report it right there. Yeah. I like it.
It would make even us internally reporting bugs easier.
Right.
So I know we shouldn't, but sometimes it's just kind of lazy.
Yeah. Yeah. And the nice thing about that too, and maybe this is what you said, is it could maybe pre-fill in this is the page that you were on when you shook it, etc. Gives. Yeah. Yeah. Just write the bug report for you. Yeah, I like that. Oh, that's true. Yeah, so we are in the left-hand navigator, in the the plus button, that the new chat. We're going to add a earn money. Maybe, I don't know. I'm not up on the latest designs, but we've talked about different ideas, but I like this one.
So, Puneet, you showed us the other repo, but from what I've heard, there's no bugs in that repo.
That's true. We did have what do you call it? Not a coup, an uprising? I don't know. There was a big push to not call things bugs and to just call them improvements. So for a long time, we had no bugs. We just had improvements that we needed to make, which I'm glad that's not the case anymore.
There's a lot of warning happening to that, and at some point, you don't even have to shake the device. Wouldn't that work to identify what is happening right there? So where sometimes would block something is out of order as a warning, so that goes somewhere. That should notify the system. And something that's not supposed to happen is happening for these users. So can this be used as some automation for tracking such?
That's a good point. I mean, we do log warnings. We used to have automatic issues created from crash reports, and I think we stopped because we were too intimidated, but that's not really a good reason. We probably, you're right, we probably should be creating issues automatically from those.
That can integrate to the shape idea because you have more context with what happens around there and the working.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good idea.
I have another question actually about not everybody is equal, as you said. Some
Sure.
it's really is worth fixing that, but there are critical bugs that, for example, the app is just unusable with them. So are we waiting for a root cause for this as well? It might take, for example, half a year to come up with that, and the bug is a fire. So
That's a great question.
in that case,
Yeah, so I think in general, we would say that we don't prioritize bugs. We try to fix everything. And the only reason that that's possible is because we have an effectively infinite capacity because of contributors. So we don't have to prioritize. But you're right, a fire is something different. And we have kind of a fuzzy process of defining what entails a fire. It's kind of like, the old Supreme Court thing. You see, when you know it, or when you see it, you know it. And so in that scenario, yes, I think we don't always want to wait around for root cause. Like if something we recently did cause that fire, like generally we're just going to revert it. That's going to be the approach, but that's not always a possibility. Our general approach to firefighting is like we create a special room for that fire and we get a bunch of people in there and we just start trying to solve it as quickly as we can. It's kind of an all hands on deck scenario. One of the pain in the ass things about Slack is that if we create a new room, it's really hard to get you guys into it. We have to a system admin has to invite, and it's just like this huge painful process. So another nice thing when we move all of this conversation into Expensify chat is that we can just spin up a room, link to it in the Expensify bugs channel, and any of you can join that and be a part of that firefighting process with us. And so I think that's going to be actually pretty critical, especially as we start to get more functionality in the app, more users on the app. Right now, it's kind of a beta app, so we have a little bit more, we're a little bit more willing to let some bugs exist, but I think pretty soon we can't allow that. We have to hold ourselves to a higher standard.
I mean, one thing we could also do in the interim is if you're unsure, post something in Expensify open source.
Yeah.
It's probably better to be safe, right, than sorry.
That's true.
I would say that probably mimics our own internal.
Yeah.
Where it's sometimes is this a fire? I think it's kind of a big deal.
Right.
Yeah. They wouldn't be able to be in the fire room, but at least we could be all on the same page.
Yeah, or allow contributors to pull the fire alarm. We kind of have a fire alarm that gets pulled and someone gets paged and it's their job to kind of deal with it. We could allow contributors to do that too. I like that idea. Yeah. Yes.
In order to improve the 4-week time,
Yeah.
to reduce that, could the proposal process be improved? Could there be a role between a contributor and a contributor plus where the issue is assigned to the frequently working contributors directly to bypass the proposal process? I'm not saying we should exactly do this.
Sure.
There could be some improvements with that.
Yeah, that's interesting, like a way of kind of leveraging known expertise. For example, maybe if someone has worked in that file recently or something like that, we could kind of prioritize having them work on the issue, or in some, or like you said, people that have worked on a certain, we have a certain level of trust with. Maybe I get a little bit scared about kind of lowering the standard of plan. I think having a good plan is important no matter who you are. But I agree with you. If we could shrink that timeline between when people propose to when they get accepted, that would be nice.
Because the reason I'm saying that is from a contributor's perspective is once a bug is reported, it's there are tens or maybe even more than 10 contributors working on the same proposal
Sure.
at the same time. So it's 10 people there that join to that and only one gets to work on that and gets rewarded or compensated for that.
Sure.
So it's most of the time contributors are competing with themselves rather than working together.
Yeah.
So that's something that I've found.
Yeah, it's a great point. I don't know what the ideal solution is. I think to some degree that competition is good because it, kind of forces people to have a high standard of what they propose in order to get selected, and I think that benefits us ultimately. But I agree with you that there's also an aspect of there's kind of this rush at the beginning, and that's also can be challenging to sift through then when we have to figure out which is the best proposal. And I think that's where some of the slowdown happens. It's okay, this bug gets reported, you get 10 proposals, and now it's okay, I have to read through these, figure out which one's best. And I think that's part of the challenge. I think I see Rushad shaking his head, so I think he's familiar with that experience. Anyone else?
Yeah, also about that, I think that maybe a good solution could be create some kind of assistance points that we can give to the contributors to help with the proposal. Because at the end, what the current system that we have is that just one proposal wins.
Sure.
In this case, to solve the problem. But sometimes, it would be great that it would have assistance.
Yeah.
Contributors.
Sure.
And eventually, I don't know, some way to reward those assistants. I don't know, in
Yeah, that's an interesting idea. We've seen this a few times where contributors will kind of end up working together on a proposal, and the proposal ends up being kind of like a mishmash of their proposals that they kind of collaborated to make better. But in general, the process doesn't encourage that. It more encourages competition, I would say, than it encourages collaboration. So you're right, there are maybe ways that we could make it so that collaboration is rewarded in the proposal stage of the process. Yeah, that's a good point. What else? Anyone else? No ideas to make it 4 seconds? I thought someone would have something. No one even said chat GPT or anything. Okay. All right. Well, cool. Thanks.